So I think every day it's becoming more and more clear that we truly live in a dark age and a real age of degeneration for many aspects of humanity across the board. And this is especially true when it comes to things relating to spirituality or things that are allegedly supposed to be transcendental or otherworldly or high-minded. It's almost really approaching a 1984 Brave New World level of complete contradiction, where things are more or less associated and conflated with their exact opposite, but people have no clue about this. That we think being a good person or being nice or trying to not live in our imaginations or trying to relax and not be so stressed is high-minded, when it's the opposite. The fact that those things are important and relevant and useful and profound and transformational for us means we're degenerates, means we're struggling the absolute bottom of the barrel of human potential. And it's really interesting to me that a group of people so keen on an alternative lifestyle and alternative philosophies are so dead set on making everything as homogenous and monotonous as possible. It's interesting to me that a group of people so dedicated to human development and improvement that their main outcome is dumbing everything down to the lowest possible common denominator and having really no standards, no discernment, and having no place for critical thought or observation, or that there might actually be units of measure that need to be applied. It's interesting to me that a group of people so immersed in striving for the pinnacle and the most transcendental aspects that life has to offer are constantly equating these things with the most base, banal, primal aspects of our organism. It's interesting to me that a group of people so accepting of everyone's unique individuality that everyone's bio in this world ends up pretty much being cut from the same cloth in a variation on the same formula of salvationism, drudgery, and monotony. I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I can see. And it's so interesting to me that a group of people so dedicated to the highest, most transcendental aspects of humanity are more or less feeling that way because they're doing basically the same exact things that they were doing before, but they've convinced themselves that it's something different. And they're now surrounded by a group of people who are equally or greater as a level of delusion. So they think, oh, well, it must be true. And it's interesting to me that many of the so-called experts that are presented to us in these days, whether it's Bill Gates, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Andrew Huberman, and the list goes on, none of these people say anything particularly bright, intelligent, useful, or revolutionary or profound in any way, shape, or form. All these people say the most basic things like go to bed early, wake up early, and people are like, whoa, incredible. Or they basically are just stuck in I don't know. I can think of like Dr. Axe and Dr. Oz and plenty of the other people like that, where they don't really say anything, they don't really do anything, they don't really have a backbone, they don't really have an opinion or a point of view, and they just sort of like are pretty weak and waffly and aren't really doing anything other than filling space. Obviously, there's some exceptions, like people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others who are clearly pushing a specific agenda and shooting down anyone who questions that or has anything counter to say to it, which is the opposite of science, the opposite of logic, pragmatism, being open-minded or critical thinker. The opposite of intelligence is basically just dogma and being a useful idiot. And I think for many of the experts that we're presented with in these days, it's exactly the same. We translate over to spirituality and self-help and self-development. Same thing. It's a lot of people that aren't really doing or saying anything particularly helpful, unique, or profound. They're just saying the most basic, trivial aspects, and people are saying that that's profound and helpful and amazing and life-changing. But if that's the case, then what does that say about the people in general? Meaning if someone comes along and says, hey, maybe if you like go outside and exercise somewhat regularly and like go to bed and wake up early, you'll feel better. And people are like, oh my God, this guy is a genius. Or in terms of spirituality or self-development, someone comes along and says, hey, maybe think about being honest with yourself and being honest with other people. And they're like, whoa, this guy must be enlightened. Someone comes along and says, hey, maybe not be completely delusional and psychotic and completely lost in your imagination all the time, i.e. try and be present. And people act like it's some God-given truth from high above, and then they kind of struggle with it for the rest of their life, even though it's kind of obvious. And the only reason that is useful to them is because they're in such a degraded, deluded state that someone's like, hey, you know, your imagination and what you construe in your life isn't real life. It's basically just some detached, traumatized, hyper abstract version that you're living in because you're not actually interfacing with life as it is. And people are like, oh my God, this guy must be enlightened. I must give him all my money. I must follow him till the end of time because this must be the high-minded thing.